Alrighty, welcome to the 82nd edition of Before the Battle. My name is Nick Baldwin of BloodyElbow.com, and joining me, as always, is Jed Meshew from the award-winning MMAfighting.com, and Wes Riddle, second show in 2 weeks. That is fantastic. Of course, from MMA Sucker. Wes and Jed, how are you guys doing?
Oh God, it's such a good day. It's such a good day for many reasons, but I'm doing excellent. How about you, Wesley?
I mean, you can't just say for many reasons and not say at least one of them. You know, what's going on in your life today other than a bit of fighting later tonight?
Well, it's a great fight weekend. Canelo Triple G is this evening, which is one of my most anticipated boxing matches probably of my lifetime. I'm really excited for that. I guess, sure, there's some MMA going, and we're going to talk about that, and that'll be, I don't know, it's an okay card. I sort of like the fact that it's only 10 fights. That's pretty nice because it's not nearly as big a commitment. You know, that's an hour to an hour and a half less than we have been getting basically for the last 2 or 3 years. But other than that, it's just a beautiful fight day. Oh, almost forgot. You're talking to the champ right now. We'll get to it in a second. But 2 titles right here. I expect all my due respect and propers coming from both of y'all in just a minute.
Well, you may receive that from me. We'll see. But Wes, first off, how's it going?
Pretty good. I'm just chilling. I'm kind of bummed I lost my belts that I've held pretty much simultaneously for the past 3 weeks. Kind of bummed about that. But you know what? It's all right.
Do they count if you're not here to celebrate them? Do they count? That's all I'm saying. If you win a belt but you're not here to hold it up in victory.
I'm holding it up in my room. But unfortunately, I wasn't here present and accounted for to share it with all of our viewers. But besides that, I'm doing all right and talking some fights, I guess, tonight, which we got a pretty good card. I'm looking forward to it, actually.
Alrighty, well, before we get to this, UFC Fight Night 116 Rockhold versus Branch, and completely forgot, I don't know how, but we'll also give our pick for Triple G Canelo afterwards. Jed, you got some good news for us. It sounds like you're coming out victorious that last weekend. We had UFC Fight Night 115. Why can I not remember what? No, 215. Yes, we had Amanda Nunes defending her title against Valentina Shevchenko in a rematch. It was a really close fight. Wes, you scored it for who do you? I know Jed's had it Shevchenko. I had it Nunes. You had it Shevchenko as well.
I watched it at Buffalo Wild Wings and the sound wasn't on, and I scored it for Nunes. But then again, I haven't had a chance to rewatch the fight, and without the sound just kind of in that moment and the atmosphere I was in, I thought she took it. I didn't think terrible decision. I feel like when I hear terrible. Or when I hear robbery, I think more of like a Sanchez Pearson. I feel like that's the wrong categorization for it, but I guess it's just a debatable decision. I feel like it could have gone either way depending on how you looked at it. But then again, I like to rewatch the fight and see kind of how Shevchenko or what Shevchenko did because maybe I paid attention too much to Nunes.
Look at this. Jed is running away from the show. He's ducking the show. This is incredible. This is incredible. Jed is ducking the show.
I had to abandon the show for a second. My dog is being an enormous pain in the ass right now. Sorry. He got in trouble just before we went on air.
No, Jed, the real story is that Jed was sad because majority of rules on the show, and Wes and I had Nunes winning. You had Shevchenko, Jed, and you were obviously wrong, and now you had to leave.
Shevchenko won 4 rounds.
I can see that. I honestly can. I see the argument for sure.
So here's my thing. Like people, there's this reflexive thing where now nobody wants to call fights or robberies unless they're egregious, because then it's like, well, that's not as bad as.
Well, this was so far from a robbery. Like,
yeah, exactly. That you're saying that right now. You are already doing it, saying that this is a robbery. But I think it's bad scoring to give Amanda Nunes 3 rounds. I think you can give her 2. I think that it is fundamentally bad scoring to give her 3 rounds, and thus I think this is a robbery. Like,
well, I heavily disagree, but
yeah, but you disagree because everybody is like,
no, because I scored the fight 3-2 for Nunes pretty clearly.
Yeah, how do you give her the 5th round?
I didn't go back and rewatch, but I thought the striking was very close. Hey, hold on.
She landed 2 punches.
Hold on. The striking was close. Again, I have to go.
Okay, 2 punches.
Okay, maybe if I go and rewatch, maybe I'll give it to Shevchenko.
No, but that's the thing. You were watching at the time, but you just forgot. You scored the 5th round for her because Amanda Nunes got 2 takedowns. Because that's why everyone who scored the 5th round for her did. But that's like just incorrect. She got beat on the feet, not by like an enormous amount. She wasn't desperation shooting, but she was getting outlanded, and then she scored 2 takedowns, which did nothing and should count for nothing according to the rules of scoring. Like I said, I think the 5th round didn't even matter. I gave Shevchenko 4 rounds. I thought Nunes won the first. I think everybody agrees Shevchenko won 2 and 4, and Nunes won the first. Those are beyond dispute for all parties involved, I believe. And then the questionable rounds are rounds 3 and rounds 5. I also thought Shevchenko beat Nunes in the 3rd round, but I'm willing to entertain the argument that, Nunes's teeps and leg kicks were more effective than the counter Shevchenko landed. But the 5th round is unquestionable to me. Nunes did absolutely nothing. She got 2 takedowns and sort of secured back control and landed 0 strikes on the ground and 2 to 4 punches standing. Like, I think it's a bad scorecard. I think calling it a robbery is fair because I think calling any clear decision that is incorrect a robbery is fine, and because it's not everything's black or white. It's not like, oh, that's either robbery or it's not. There's a spectrum. Is it as bad a robbery as like half of Diego Sanchez's wins? No. But like Amanda, it is a bigger robbery than those Nicholas just left us, and he won't hear this point. It's a bigger robbery than a lot of other robberies we see in MMA because of the financial incentives that follow it. So maybe you think that it's a close fight, but you thought Shevchenko won. But the reality here is Shevchenko is going to make substantially less money by losing that fight, which a majority of people seem to, maybe it's a close majority, but a majority do seem to be of the opinion that Shevchenko won. And I believe it is correct that she won the fight. So she's losing a lot more money here. So it's a bigger robbery than basically any of Leonard Garcia's bullshit wins, So that's just my take on it, but we don't need to talk about that. Wes, I know Nicholas is gone. So while Nick is gone and he comes back, why don't I recap our previous event, how it all scored, and then we can keep this train rolling. As I said, double champ right here, 2 times the champion. In the picks, it was a close picks contest. I was your winner with a 6-5 record, so I'm trying to celebrate a little less just because it's not a great record. Both you and Nick went 5-6. All 3 of us missed the Martin, the curtain jerker Martin. Obviously, got knocked out pretty early on there. In a fight, I think we all felt confident on. We all correctly picked Bular. Wait. Who won? Did Mitch Clark lost? Didn't he?
Yeah, to Alex White.
Ooh, I incorrectly tallied right here. I'm sorry, Wesley. You in fact beat Nicholas, who went 4-7. Somehow I marked Nick correct. Excuse me for his Mitch Clark pick. So Nick got Mitch Clark incorrect. Obviously, Alex White came away with the victory there. All 3 of us got the Gavin Tucker fight. I think that might have been one of the more surprising efforts of the weekend. Gavin Tucker getting pretty easily handled there. All 3 of us were incorrect on Ashley Evans Smith. All 3 of us were incorrect on Sarah McMahon. All 3 of us were incorrect on Melendez versus Stevenson. I say all 3. It's important for you listeners out there who may be thinking back. I thought Nick picked Joe Stevenson. Definitely not right. I thought Nick picked Jeremy Stevens. Well, he did until he informed us after the fact. Said, "Hey guys," right before the fight, actually. "Hey guys, I'm going to change my pick to go with Melendez." That did not work out for him. Wouldn't have mattered anyway. He still would have been the loser, but that makes him the complete loser right there. I was correct in saying that Alir Latifi was going to be able to edge out Tyson Pedro, both Wes and Nicholas. That's really the decider between me and Wes there was the Pedro fight. All 3 of us had Cejudo, all 3 of us had RDA, and all 3 of us had Shevchenko. All 3 of us were wrong, but as I previously established, all 3 of us were right. And the judges, or 2 of the judges, were incorrect. Moving on. DraftKings results from last time. Again, I am your winner. It wasn't even close this time. 462.5 points. I had a pretty strong showing. 2 or 3 fighters who all scored over 100 points. Wes Riddle coming in second with 241 points. Henry Cejudo, his best performer. Everybody else kind of shit in the bed a little bit for that. And once again, at the bottom, Nicholas with a 156.5. Nobody performing particularly well. Quite a shame because he had a team that would have been pretty good, but also opted out of the team that would have been pretty good. So just coming up all short for Nick, except for one area. An impressive showing by our good man Nicholas Baldwin. Went 3 for 4 on, or I guess 2 for 3 on post-fight prediction, which is about the best since I've been keeping track of this. Nick predicted Stevens Melendez as the fight of the night. That was the fight of the night. He also predicted Henry Cejudo to get a performance of the night bonus. Henry Cejudo, in fact, did. His last pick was Martin to get a performance of the night bonus. Obviously, Martin didn't even get a win, much less a bonus. The last bonus went to Rafael dos Anjos for his absolute demolition in first-round submission. Wes also picked the fight of the night correctly. He gave Shevchenko and Pedro performance bonuses. Neither of them won nor got bonuses. I came up with a big fat fucking goose egg in my bonus prediction. Nunes of Shevchenko was my fight of the night. Latifi and Martin were all my performance picks. None of those came through, although Latifi did score that minor upset victory, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. That's our recap. We can move on. Glad to have you back, Nicholas. Take charge and run the show.
I just find it insane how freaking, the internet hates me. I rat on you, Jed, for ducking the show, for, going to say hi to your dog for literally 10 seconds, and then 5 minutes later, the internet kicks me off for 2 minutes.
Karma is just a cruel, cruel mistress. I know.
It is. Well, you have an hour. You have somewhere to be. And an hour exactly. We have to be done within 60 minutes. And with this being only a 10-fight card, we should be able to do so. Although we have spent much longer than an hour on cards much worse than this. So,
damn sure have.
Let's see how this goes. Hopefully we can stick within an hour. We've already been going on for 15 minutes or so. First fight of the night, we have a lightweight battle between Jason Sago and Gilbert Dorino Burns. Actually a pretty interesting matchup. Both guys are really good on the mat. Burns is the BJJ coach at Combat Club down in Florida now. Sago is, of course, Canadian. I don't really know if he coaches much, but Jed, Sago, or Burns, interesting fight here. First fight of the night. Who do you got?
This is a pretty close fight here. I'm interested to see how it plays out. To me, Sago maybe has more tools in the toolbox, but Gilbert Burns seems like his style of fighting is more likely to win here. You mentioned it; they're both good grapplers. Sago's got a BJJ black belt, direct from Royler Gracie, and has had one for like almost 10 years or something. He's also got a Muay Thai background. He trained in Thailand for a good stretch of time. I'm not entirely sure exactly how long, but you see that in his style. He plays a slow Muay Thai kickboxing game on the feet, and on the ground. He is a really talented grappler. Problem here is Gilbert Burns is a multiple-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. We're talking about a guy who can fucking grapple his ass off, and is an okay wrestler. And that, to me, that's the difference here. Sago is not a great defensive wrestler, mostly because he doesn't particularly care, because he's such a competent jiu-jitsu player. He's been historically pretty comfortable getting taken down, working sweeps and subs off his back. Likes to go to that mission control and situation work from there. And that's not going to play against Gilbert Burns. That's going to have less than zero success. Again, multiple-time BJJ world champion. It's a guy who, has beat Kron Gracie in grappling, and Kron Gracie no fucking joke. So I suspect that Burns is, this is going to look Burns coming forward, Sago trying to move around a little bit, work some kicks. Eventually, I think Burns is going to get the takedowns and be able to ride out top position. I think Sago is a good enough grappler to avoid the finish, but I think Burns probably takes all 3 rounds, certainly takes 2 of them.
Yeah, I don't really have too much more to add on this one. I've been kind of back and forth on a pick on this one as well. Jason Sago and Gilbert Burns, very, very similar stylistic matchup. It could be and make for a pretty exciting fight, especially if this one hits down on the mat. Before we went on broadcast, I was going to pick Gilbert Burns by decision, but I switched back. I'm going to go Jason Sago in this one. I think that his striking is just a little more technically there. We saw it utilized a little bit in the Leandro Silva fight where it looked pretty coming together in his game, because that's one thing Saga had struggled with beforehand. Also was able to land a couple decent shots on Paul Felder in their fight back when they fought early on in their UFC careers. I don't know if Gilbert Burns has really the output offensively to be able to keep up with Sago on the feet if it does stay there. And I think the wrestling advantage goes to Sago a little bit too. I think Burns maybe has just the advantage in the grappling by a touch, but I don't know if it's going to play a factor if Sago gets him down and Gilbert's off his back. I'm going to be going Jason Sago. Could be like a split decision, but I'm going to say unanimous. I think this will maybe be it'll be a close fight, I think, either way that it goes, but I do think that Saga might have a little bit of an advantage where all the other categories kind of neutralize. I think the striking of Saga might just be able to get him a win here.
Well, this is a pretty tough fight to call. I don't, a lot of these times, a lot of fights when we see two good jiu-jitsu practitioners going at it, we end up seeing a pretty poor man's kickboxing match. My gut feeling is that we won't. I think we'll actually see a fairly fun jiu-jitsu match here. I think it'll be quite entertaining. This is one where I think Burns just comes out on top ever so slightly. I think Sago has the chance to, say, get up from bottom and take dominant control and look for submission attacks of his own. But I think Burns just might be a bit more active, and he's also been working on his wrestling, on his takedowns a lot. I talked to him a couple months after the Michel Prazeres fight, actually a bit more than that, because that fight was in September. So one thing to note is that he's been out for nearly a year, so that's something to look out for. Whether or not that's good or bad. I talked to Burns, I want to say in April or May, and he talked about really working on his wrestling after that Prazeres fight. So that's something to look out for. We might see a bit more improved Burns in the wrestling department here. I like Burns a little bit here, not a lot. Probably avoid this if you're a betting guy. It could go either way. It's a close match stylistically and on paper. The pick here, though, is Burns. I think he out-grapples Sago just by a little bit. Burns by unanimous decision. Next up, we got one of the better fights on the card. I have no idea why this is the second fight of the night and buried in the FS1 prelims. Got Krzysztof Jotko taking on Uriah Hall, who might be in danger of this being his last UFC fight should he lose. Perhaps that's why this is the second fight of the night, but still, Jotko is a big enough name. Hall is as well. This could easily be co-main event here, but nonetheless, can't complain about the bout order too much because we still see the same fights. Jotko and Hall. Jed, who do you got?
Give me Krzysztof Jotko. I frankly will be honest here. I did not watch his fight with David Branch. 211. I think it was apparently a very close one, and I believe you, Nicholas, were one of the few people who actually scored that for Jotko. So you can correct me, any type of thoughts we have here. I never went back and watched it because it seemed really boring. And
it was boring. It was close. I didn't care. A lot of people had for Branch. I think I favored you. I think you're right on that I did score to Jotko, but either way, not a robbery. Very close. I was probably wrong. At that point, I don't care. It was a close fight. It was very, very not a good performance from either guy. I expected a lot more from Jotko, even from Branch. Like, that was not a good performance. Branch was not happy. I know he said stuff to the media afterwards as well, saying that. So yeah, that, don't go back and watch that if you feel like you should.
Yeah, I'm not going to. But I guess the point I'm trying to get to, though, is, I remember picking Jotko ahead of time. I've been pretty high on him, basically as a better version of Michael Bisping, just a cardio volume kickboxer. Not really a threat to finish, but you give him enough time, his volume's probably, he's got good cardio. He's going to outwork you over 15, 25 minutes. And thought that would be enough to take David Branch. Apparently it was very close, and also apparently he did not fight particularly well. But beyond that, Jotko has looked good in the UFC implementing that style. Talis Litis, Tandem McCrory, Askham, somebody else was in there too. He's had a lot of effect with that, and that's a perfect style to beat Uriah Hall with. Frankly, almost any style at this point seems like maybe it could beat Uriah Hall. He hasn't looked good in 2 years. His last win was 2015 against Gegard Mousasi. Obviously, Mousasi came back and avenged that with a vengeance just last year. But, I mean, even before that, he was getting his ass beat by Mousasi and pulled a rabbit way on out of his hat. He's one of those guys who has all the potential in the world, doesn't seem to be able to put it together, something there mentally about a willingness to fight, a willingness to throw, and he just gets outworked by anybody in the cage with him. And he also seems to crumble if you can put real pressure to him. I don't think Jocko's going to put the pressure to him, but barring Uriah Hall, pulling a Mousasi here and doing some spinning shit that lands and changes the entire complexion of everything, which is possible but not probable. Jocko's just going to outwork him over 15 minutes, take a comfortable decision. I think he'll probably win all 3 rounds.
It's hard to pick against Jocko, too, because he's only had 2 losses out of 21 fights, and his last loss, at least, was to David Branch. Before that, it was to Sed Blah by submission in a fight where I thought maybe Jocko was up, but maybe I'm not 100% certain. I agree with Jed on this one. I really don't have too much else to add. I don't think Uriah Hall has the ability to push forward in fights when he needs to, and I think that's one thing that's hurt him pretty much in most of his losses, especially the hot fight on the top fight, and also the fights where he got knocked out. Jotko, I don't know, like you said, if he's going to be able to put the pressure on him, but I do think that that's one thing that maybe he could have picked up from after watching a little bit of tape, and something that may be easy for a fighter to implement against a fighter who usually fights, I wouldn't say backpedaling, but definitely circling around on the outside, and I think Jotko is going to be able to do that. It's possible that Jocko could get a finish in this one where he does have some pretty impressive striking when he puts together combinations, but sometimes he doesn't really have a whole lot of output. He looks more for the technicality behind things. Uriah Hall does a lot of unpredictable things. I think that Jocko is going to be able to take this one probably by a decision, but I do think a finish could be possible, seeing that Uriah Hall would stop in his last 2 fights. But I do think that Jocko is going to be able to get the job done here.
Yeah, Jocko's fundamentals are just so much better than Hall's. Hall is very, just crazy. Obviously, you look back to his knockout over Gegard Mousasi a couple years ago, and it's incredible some of the things he can do, some of the kicks he can land, but he's so, he's unpredictable, but he's also very, you can't rely on him. He's one guy, so you never bet on him because he'll either show up or just don't bet his fights, because sometimes he shows up like the best middleweight on the planet, almost like he did against Mousasi, although he did get almost 10-8'd in that first round. Or he shows up like one of the worst and gets grounded out by Hoffy on the towel. So, the guy's super unreliable, inconsistent, and just not a good, that none of those things are good to have as a fighter. Jotko, I was a little disappointed, as I said off the top, with his performance over Branch. I thought he could do a lot more and would be a lot more active. But in general, he is much more active than Hall, and I think that will come true here. I think he'll have a much higher output. I think he's, bread and butter and fundamentals. I think he's slightly better striker than Hall. Hall is more powerful, and sure, he has his kicks, but it needs to land, and that's, pretty rare, of course. I think Jotko will outpoint him on the feet. I don't see this going to the mat. Hall, as Jed said, crumbles. I don't think this is a matchup where Hall will crumble, just because Jotko's not a guy to, get on top of you and beat you up and elbow you and all this. Like, he likes his range as well. So I think this will be a kickboxing fight. I think it'll be pretty entertaining, but could be slow at times. Jotko, just looking back to his the Branch loss, he wasn't very active in that fight, a bit different. It wasn't the Jotko I'd been getting used to. And Hall, of course, at times, very, very inactive as well. So could be a fun fight, could be the other way as well. The pick here, though, nonetheless, is Jotko. Pretty confident. I'd be pretty surprised if Uriah Hall does get the job done. Jotko, either 30-27 or 29-28 unanimous decision. Next up, we got Anthony Hamilton versus Daniel Spitz in the heavyweight division. Jed, are you going to go with the freight train or Daddy Long Legs?
I'm going to be honest. I'm assuming that the freight train is Hamilton and Spitz is Daddy Long Legs, but I'm not super well versed on their fight nicknames. Give me Hamilton here. I can't feel super confident in it because this is heavyweight MMA, and frankly, any fucking thing in the world can happen in heavyweight MMA. Spitz is, I don't particularly think too much of Spitz, I guess, is really the reason here. He's a big dude, former college football player, and seems like it's weird. He's certainly not athletic because he's slow as molasses, but he's not athletic because he's pretty light on his feet. He doesn't plod around, like he's mobile, for especially for a heavyweight. So it's a real strange one for me. But he doesn't do anything really great, as far as I can tell. He's not offensively potent. I think that's more what I mean to say. He'll throw strikes, he'll throw knees in the clinch, but none of them are there to really hurt you. And my biggest issue is he's extremely hittable. He leaves his head right there to get punched. He's so slow that he can't pull out of the way. And if he floats a jab out there, he gets countered. We saw him just get absolutely chewed up by Mark Godbeer. And Anthony Hamilton hits hard, and basically that's it. If Spitz throws a punch and Hamilton's not defensively minded either. He just runs forward, leaves his chin out there. I could see Spitz maybe dropping him with that, or maybe Spitz changes levels, gets a takedown. It's not like Hamilton's some great practitioner of jiu-jitsu. But Hamilton's been he's a collegiate wrestler, I believe, and a good wrestler. I think Spitz is stuck on the feet with him, and maybe he can volume him and hope Hamilton wears down and gets tired. But Hamilton's going to throw something. It's going to land on the chin. That's going to be night for the big, tall daddy long legs. Give me Hamilton by a second-round KO.
I was not really too impressed with Daniel Spitz' fight against Mark Godbeer, and I think you nailed it on the head when you were talking about speed, the speed difference. Daniel Spitz has pretty much no speed with any of his punches. He's very slow. Moves, you did say he does move pretty well on his feet. He looks like he's nice and bouncy, and it looks like he's going to utilize his range really well, but he doesn't in the end. And the only times that he really throws anything are when he's in clinch positions. He really has no offensive output when it comes to striking on the feet. And half the time, if he ever does throw a punch, it's from his opponents being aggressive and coming forward, and then he tries to look for one counter before they end up clinching, and then he tries to do what he does, and that's the clinch and try to find the positioning against the cage to where he can land some knees and punches. But no speed. Anthony Hamilton is a pretty quick striker. He does have a lot faster hands. A very powerful athlete. He's actually probably one of the more powerful hitting heavyweights there is in the division, but it doesn't really show with his record because he does not really have the best consistency. He does lose quite a bit of his fights, doesn't have great submission defense, and also just doesn't have the best chin. But Anthony Hamilton does hit like a freight train. I think that he's going to be able to hit like a freight train tonight when he fights Daniel Spitz. And I think he's going to be able to put him away in either the first or second round. So give me Anthony Hamilton by a first-round stoppage.
Yeah, this is kind of a whatever fight. Hamilton isn't, that good at all, but Spitz just, I don't think is, any good. I guess for UFC heavyweight division, he might be caliber. It's so hard to tell. He's had one UFC fight and didn't look good against, an already fairly low-level Mark Godbeer. Hamilton is coming off 2 back-to-back losses, although granted one of them was to Francis Ngannou, but the other was to a fighter now in the middleweight division, Marcel Fortuna, and that was a knockout. Fortuna stepped up on short notice. So that's not very good. He's lost 3 of his last 4. He is overall in the UFC, let's see, 3-5, unless my math skills are not on today. I don't know. Hamilton will win. Hamilton's the pick. I just can't be confident because it's also Anthony Hamilton. I think he's a bit quicker. I think his striking's a bit better. I think he could take Spitz down and hold him. Spitz, he's kind of a submission guy. His jiu-jitsu isn't terrible. Maybe Hamilton has been caught in submissions before, including in his debut and his second last fight to Oleksiy Oleinik and most recently Ngannou. So, that is a path to victory for Spitz, but probably his only. He has a reach advantage, I would assume. The guy is incredibly tall, and his nickname is Daddy Longlegs, for heaven's sakes, but his height and reach are not on UFC.com. So I would imagine, and Hamilton's a fairly short heavyweight, I believe. So I would imagine there's a height and reach advantage here. He could use that to his advantage. I just don't think he's good enough to do so. Hamilton gets in range and knocks him out. Let's go late in the first. Next up, we got the last FS1 prelim, and quick note, there's no prelims on Fight Pass. I forgot to mention that. So first card, no Fight Pass fights at all. Tony Martin taking on Olivier Aubin-Mercier, the next George St. Pierre, maybe, kind of, not really at all. Jed Martin, the American, or Olivier Aubin-Mercier, the Quebec kid himself.
This is a pretty close fight in some ways. I don't know. I'm a tough guy to listen to on this. I don't think much of Tony Martin's game. I can't put my finger on exactly why in general. I was one of like the only people, I guess, in the world who thought that Johnny Case beat him. And I rewatched that fight this morning, and I completely stand by it. It might also have a lot to do with Tony Martin's kind of bullshit in the middle of the fight when he's getting punched in the face. And it's like, I'm standing right here, hit me. Never been a big fan of basically anybody who does that bullshit. Like, don't talk shit, effectuate offense. You know, that's just my thing. Like, it's tedious and annoying, and I really dislike it. And maybe that has to do with it. I also just don't like Tony Martin's striking game. I don't know. Like, it doesn't feel very good to me. And he's a good grappler, though. But Olivier Aubin-Mercier's game, his striking game feels more natural to me, even if I don't think he's a good polished striker, really. We saw in his last fight, though, against Dober, who is a Muay Thai world champion of whatever the fuck that means. He really won that fight on the feet. You know, he was countering well, picking his spots well. I still don't think you would ever look at Olivier Aubin-Mercier and be like, man, that guy is a great striker. But he's an effective striker, and that's a big difference, and that makes a difference in cage fights. The difference maker here for me really is Aubin-Mercier's grappling and wrestling game. If it stays on the feet, Tony Martin's going to have a little bit of size, a little bit of length. Size isn't height. Olivier Aubin-Mercier is a pretty thick dude. They probably weigh around the same thing, but Tony Martin's going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, and going to try and flick out a jab or a long hook and maybe some kicks and stay at range. But I think Aubin-Mercier can counter the kind of weak sauce shit Tony Martin brings on the feet. And I also think that he can – I just think he can take him down. OAM shoots a lot. He's not like a great wrestler, but he's persistent, gets his takedowns, gets about a takedown around. And Tony Martin is a fine grappler, but I don't think he's going to really bring anything that OAM won't be like capable of sticking with. So on the feet, I think Aubin-Mercier can be effective enough to keep it close, and I think he's just going to take advantage of the grappling game. Give me Aubin-Mercier by decision.
I don't think too much of this fight. I think it'll be an okay one, maybe in the grappling, but don't have a whole lot of expectations from it. Two things that you said that really stood out to me, and one of the things I was actually going to talk about, the biggest thing was OAM's last fight he had with Drew Dober, in a fight where, of course, Drew Dober is a Muay Thai specialist. That's kind of where he excels, but OAM was able to capitalize and pretty much outstrike him on the feet, and in that second round was able to take him down and get the submission. The other thing that you said that kind of stood out to me that I also did want to talk on was OAM shoots a lot. He looks for takedowns quite frequently, and Tony Martin doesn't really have the best takedown defense. We've seen him taken down quite a bit and put on his back here in a bunch of different fights. And also, he doesn't really have the best submission defense himself. I think Mercier could be able to pull off some kind of submission maybe later in the fight, because he is a pretty good at top control. When he's able to get you down, we don't really see the fighters be able to stand back up. He's usually able to keep them down for a long period of time. And I don't know if Tony Martin's going to be able to get up, but I think that Mercier is going to be able to get the job done. Not really sure how. I think a submission or a decision is going to be likely, probably later. Definitely not a stoppage. I don't think either one of these two are going to knock each other out. That would be wild. But I just don't really think Tony Martin's skills equate to the level that Olivier has in his game. And I think that Mercier's striking is coming together a little bit more, as we did see in that Drew Dober fight, in comparison to where he started in the beginning of his career, but also just in comparison to Tony Martin, who doesn't really have a whole lot of output. I didn't even see the last fight that he had with Johnny Case. But to wrap it up, my pick for this one's Mercier by a unanimous decision.
Well, we differ. It is me versus you guys this time. I am going Tony Martin, and I am actually pretty confident. I'm going against Canada. Hopefully not too many of my fellow Canadians are listening because they will all be mad. I just don't think Olivier Aubin-Mercier is, fantastic. He's not well-rounded. He's great on the ground. Once he gets you on the ground and he either holds you down or wraps up some sort of submission, he's really, really good on the mat. And he's young and he's getting better, but he's still very stiff on the feet. I don't think he's that good of a striker. That's my honest opinion. I think Tony Martin eats him alive on the feet. I think Tony Martin clearly outpoints him, and I don't see this going to the ground as much as you guys think. Now that I think about it, Martin has been taken down, but I think he has worked on his takedown defense. We haven't seen him taken down too much as of late. So I think his defense will hold up enough to get the job done. He'll probably find himself on his back at least once or twice in the fight, but I think his game is going to be good enough. I think this will mostly play out on the feet, and that's where I really see Tony Martin doing work and doing well. So Tony Martin, by unanimous decision, is my pick, and I was pretty surprised to see he's the underdog. But, knowing me, knowing my luck, Aubin-Mercier is going to tap him out in the first round. But my pick here, in all seriousness, pretty confident, is Tony Martin by decision. Next up, kicking off the six-fight FS1 main card at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. This will be a very late card. This is starting at the time of a pay-per-view, and we have an extra fight, so we're going to have some fun with that. Justin Ledet, El Blanco, taking on newcomer Zhu Anyanwu, who was, of course, on Dana White's Looking for a Fight. No, not Looking for a Fight, Tuesday Night Contender Series, and picked up a win over... Oh, I can't remember the guy's name. Picked up a victory in the second round. It was a knockout on the first card, early July. Did not get signed that night, but here he is stepping up on short notice for a guy, cannot pronounce his last name, Damien So something. Anyways, Jed, Ledet, or Anyan Wu, who is the pick?
It's close. I think it's way closer than the odds suggest. I'm not a huge fan of Ledet. I think he's fine. It's weird. He's a little small for the division thickness wise. He previously competed as a light heavyweight. And his game's weird. He was a pro boxer as recently as 2015, I think. And he's got pretty decent, crisp hands. His wrestling seemed not that great on the regional circuit. We haven't seen it obviously yet. Didn't really come into play all that much in his recent efforts. And I really like Zhu Anyanwu. I don't think he's a great heavyweight by any stretch. I thought he deserved to get the call up from the Tuesday Night Contender Series. He was one of the guys I had my eye on going into it. He's had a very mediocre regional career in general, but I sort of like his skill sets. I think that he can be certainly an interesting guy at heavyweight. And I think he's done okay. He's competed mostly in CFFC, so he's not facing a bunch of great guys. But a little background. I mean, he's a heavyweight, and he's built like a heavyweight. He's not particularly tall. I think he's just north of 6 feet, but he's wide, and he throws hammers on the feet. He's got a lot of power, not a ton of technique, really. But thing you're probably not going to know about him is that he's a really good grappler. Feel like he has some sort of wrestling background. I'm not certain on that, but I do know that this is a guy who beat Gunnar Nelson in a Grappler's Quest open weight trial. This dude can grapple his ass off, and he did a lot of stalling in the Gunny win and just sort of used his size to his advantage. But a majority of human beings on the planet would not be able to use their advantages over Gunnar Nelson in a grappling contest. So this dude can grapple. He does make some appearances on the sort of low level competitive grappling scene, and he throw hammers. I don't love Ledet, and the last time I saw Ledet's defensive wrestling, it wasn't stellar. Bit of concern about Zhu coming in on short notice. Maybe he can get an early takedown and secure the first round, and then Ledet kind of punches him out over the following two, just as a cardio advantage. But for funsies, and because I do like him and sort of think he can maybe stick around the division, give me the big time upset, Azuna Anyanwu. I'm going by decision. I think he'll just he'll win the first 2 rounds and survive the third.
I like that. I've been back and forth on this one too. Ledet, he's looked, I guess, okay in his past couple fights. He's still undefeated as a professional and as an amateur. Was able to pick up a pretty impressive victory over Chase Sherman back when they fought. Used a lot of technique and combinations with that background that he has in boxing. Mark Godbeer in that fight, I think he took him down pretty quick with a takedown and then was able to find a rear naked choke and choke him out back there. And that was his last victory, which came in November of last year. So we're approaching about a year since we've seen Ledet in the octagon. Zulu, I do remember watching him fight Red Ravella when they fought on the Contender Series. Looked okay. Didn't really look as fast as Ledet. I think Ledet's hands are just a little bit quicker. But I was impressed with his grappling abilities. I feel like that he's going to have the advantage there, being able to score takedowns and just be able to land some ground and pound on top if he's able to get the fighters down. But only thing concerning is that I saw he had a loss to Dan Spahn, who's not really the greatest athlete in the world, but he was able to pull off a pretty impressive streak for a little bit of time there in some of his more recent fights. But I'm going to go with what I initially picked, and that was Ledet by decision. I feel like his technique, if he's able to avoid the takedowns of Zulu, that Ledet is going to be able to pick him apart with his boxing, just very technical, and be able to land a 1-2, maybe knock him out. But I think the more likely outcome is probably a decision, seeing that Ledet doesn't really have a whole lot of knockouts on his resume, more so submissions, because he's able to get fighters down and somehow get submissions despite being known for his boxing. I'll stick with Ledet in this one. I think he's going to take a unanimous decision, but maybe pretty close, kind of similar to what you said. I think maybe Zulu can take a round in there with a takedown, and Ledet struggles to get up. But I do think that over time, over the course of the fight, Ledet having already, I guess, been ready for this one. Well, I guess Anayu was Anayu supposed to fight?
No, he was. I have no idea if he was supposed to fight or not.
On this card,
I didn't know.
He wasn't.
Yeah, I didn't know if this
card.
was
I don't know
the
if
first
one scheduled.
Yeah, I thought Ledet was gonna or supposed to fight somebody else. Maybe I'm
He
wrong.
was.
He
He
was.
was.
No,
Oh,
you're right.
okay, he was. Then okay,
Damien
then
so something. I can't pronounce the guy's last name. He's not a good.
Sosnovsky.
Yeah, that's
Sosnovsky.
yes.
Okay, there it is. I remember that. I do think that with him being prepared a little bit more for this fight, just an advantage too. So I'm going to take Ledet by decision.
Yeah, my pick here is Justin Ledet by unanimous decision as well. I think on paper this is close, mostly though because it's a heavyweight matchup. Anything can happen. Zoo can certainly knock out Ledet, who's never been beat or of course finished. But Anyan Wu hits very hard. He's a bit of a slugger in a way. He throws some bombs, and I didn't know this, but learn something every day. Apparently, he has some jits as well. So that might be his best path to victory here, because Ledet is a very good boxer. He has quite a good jab. He's very good on the feet for a lower level heavyweight who I think could go not to the top, but has a little bit of potential to maybe crack into the top 15. Zhu, this is a tough one. Anyan Wu, if he's able to get on top of Ledet, who he's bigger than, he has a chance. Bigger, Ledet is taller and he has a reach advantage, but Anyan Wu is a lot thicker and just in general, I think, pretty much a bit heavier. Their weight here says 240 each, but I find that a bit hard to believe that Anyan Wu is also the same size weight-wise as Ledet. But anyway, stylistically, though, I think Ledet's able to keep this standing, and I think he does very well on the feet. He showed that in his Chase Sherman fight, and just another thing is that he seems to have some submissions as well. We haven't. Well, in his German fight, we saw none of it, and then in his last fight against Mark Godbeer, we saw his jits as well. He has 63% of his 8 wins by submission, and so must be pretty good on the mat, like Anyan Wu. So I think this one stays standing. I think Ledet has the takedown defense to keep Anyan Wu mostly off of him, and I think their submission skills will counteract each other. I think those will mostly stay on the feet. And I like Ledet to outpoint Anyan Wu on the feet. If Anyan Wu, I don't know what his gas tank is like. Just the fact that he's a fairly thick heavyweight, I have the feeling it's not fantastic. Ledet, on the other hand, has decent cardio. But my point was, if Anyan Wu does end up tiring, which is very possible if it goes to the second and third round. I think there's a chance for Ledet finish. Like, it just hurts him. Anyanwu very tired, falls down, ground and pound over. But Ledet isn't the most powerful heavyweight. Jed mentioned that he has fought at light heavyweight before. That makes sense. I'm not sure if I actually knew that. Ledet doesn't have much power for heavyweight, though. He's not a huge bomber by any means. So I don't see him finishing Anyanwu, but I would go by late TKO if he did have a bit more power. So that's just one point I wanted to make. And like Wes said, to wrap things up, Anyanwu stepping up short notice, not always great. Could pay off for him, but you never know. So Ledet by unanimous decision is my pick. Next up in the welterweight division, we got one of the hottest prospects and a guy who will be a contender sooner than later, I believe. Kamaru Usman, the Nigerian Nightmare, taking on the Panther, Sergio Moraes. Kind of interesting matchup here because I think it could be close. Moraes isn't a bad fighter. He's a good fighter, but Usman's very good. The thing though with this is it's too bad because Usman deserves more than this. Moraes isn't top 15. He's probably not top 20. Lucky to be top 25. Usman though is one of the better welterweights in the world and deserves a big step up. Unfortunately, he did not get one here. Not really, anyways. But anything can happen. Jed, Usman, or Moraes?
This isn't a close one to me at all. Kamaru Usman is going to win this walking away. Sergio Moraes needs takedowns to win fights in general, and he is not going to get any against Kamaru Usman, who is an excellent athlete, an excellent wrestler, and a bigger man and a younger man. And on the feet, he is going to get wildly outworked. We've seen Usman grow a lot as a striker. He is only getting better. This is a guy who has designs on being a top 10 guy with the win here, top 15 guy, and making overtures for a title shot sooner rather than later. And I think he'll probably get there. One of the best prospects we've got going right now at 170. And I don't see how he loses. Like, Sergio Moraes isn't going to take him down. And on the feet, Moraes is going to eat 2 punches for everyone that he throws if he even lands it. Give me Usman on points all day.
Yeah, Sergio Moraes, his last pretty much 5 fights have all been ridiculously close. When he fought Mikhail Lebo back when they fought in 2015, I thought Lebo took around in that one. I thought Akhmedov was up in that fight until Moraes came back and got a knockout in that one. Barely, I guess he had the draw with Luan Chagas in a fight where he almost was knocked out. Had no output against Zach Otto, and then David Ramos was able to hurt him in that fight. But Moraes got the decision. Very close fight there. I think Usman is way better than all of them. Probably the best opponent that Sergio Moraes has fought. And I think you nailed it on the head. You actually kind of took the words out of my mouth when you said that Moraes, he wins his fights by getting takedowns, and guess what? He's not going to be able to take a guy like Kamaru Usman down. I think this is going to be one-sided, a complete domination and steamroll. Of course, I say that, and then somehow Moraes is going to win, but I really do think that Kamaru Usman is just a freak of an athlete, one of the best athletes we've seen, especially in the welterweight division. I think he's going to take this one in impressive fashion, maybe pick up a TKO in like a second or a third round. I know Brett Cooper stopped Moraes back in the day, but I think the most likely outcome, of course, is like a 30-27, maybe a 30-26 in their decision for Kamaru Usman.
I'm going to hurry this up a little bit just because I looked at the time and we have about 23 minutes to go until Jed has to say au revoir, and we will as well. So, Usman, I like him here a lot. Moraes is a good fighter, but Usman is on a different level. Usman's wrestling is fantastic. He should be able to, if you want to, take Moraes down and avoid any and all submission threats from Moraes. That is my honest opinion. I think he's able to control the Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner on the mat. If he so chooses. I think a better path to victory even is on the feet. Usman is getting better and a lot better, on the feet. His past couple fights we saw against Sean Strickland and Warley Alves, particularly, his striking is getting a lot better. At one point in his UFC career, coming off the Ultimate Fighter, he's really good at wrestling. But, man, he's really well-rounded now, and he's just getting better. Usman, saying it right now, I've said this for a while. I think he'll fight for a title sooner than later. just on a different level, and I think he's one of the better welterweights on the planet right now. Usman, let's say by TKO. I don't know. Yeah, TKO probably closer to ground and pound. Hurts Moraes on the feet than ground and pound to follow it up in the second round. Next up, we got Gregor Gillespie, who I faded against Andrew Holbrook, and that is still fantastic. He is taking on Jason Gonzalez in the lightweight division. Jed, who do you got?
Come on, bro. You know what I'm talking here. I'm all on that Gregor Gillespie train. And frankly, we can just take my Kamaru Usman stuff from last time and put it the same here. Only instead of Sergio Moraes, who is a legitimate fighter, add in Jason Gonzalez, who is a guy who got knocked out by Drew Dober in like a minute or whatever it is. Like we saw last fight, Gregor Gillespie, I picked him to win. Both of you people were insane and decided that he would not be able to out wrestle Andrew Holbrook, despite the fact that the only reason Gregor Gillespie isn't competing on an international stage at wrestling is he fought in one of the deepest weight divisions, which is currently overrun by Brett Metcalf and Jordan Burroughs and international wrestling superstars like that. So, and you guys ended up being correct. He did not out wrestle Andrew Holbrook. He threw one punch and laser beamed Andrew Holbrook off the face of the goddamn earth. If he could knock out Andrew Holbrook like that, I don't know why he couldn't knock out a dude who got fucking bolted by Drew Dober. Gregor Gillespie, early, dominant fashion. Yeah, all day.
You're actually wrong. It was only Nick, because I have always been on the Gregor Gillespie hype train for a long period of time and picked Gillespie to win that fight. And I told you that everybody needs to get on the train because he was going to win. And you can mark my words on that one. I promise. Andrew Holbrook was not
going to go check the tape. I'm going to go check the tape.
Check the tape, but I'm pretty sure I've always been high on Gillespie, and I was super
Wes, you could be right, and now Jed and I will look stupid, but I could have sworn you were on Holbrook as well.
I thought that I called you both crazy. We'll check the tape afterwards, but continue, Wes. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I've always been high on Gillespie. I really like this guy. I've always liked his abilities. I've always thought that he was going to be a great athlete, and I'm really glad that he was able to get a stoppage his last fight. Andrew Holbrook wasn't the greatest fighter in the world, but Gillespie showed really impressive improvements in the striking game. I think that he's going to pull off another victory here in this one. I think he excels in all areas of the fight. He's got fantastic striking abilities now, as we've seen. He's got quick hands, a great left hook that he was able to capitalize on that fight. And I think Gillespie is going to be able to take out Jason Gonzalez, who's been stopped twice by knockout in his career. Just not really Gonzalez to really pick him or support him, which is unfortunate. But I'm really high on Gillespie. I've always been stoked about him, and I'm very excited to be able to watch him fight again. He's one of my favorite up-and-comers on the roster, and I really think he's going to be able to do some impressive things tonight. So I've got him picked by a first-round knockout.
Yeah, like Gregor Gillespie here as well. I'm on the train after fading him against Andrew Holbrook. That was not good at all. Did not pay off whatsoever. So I'm here. I've made it to the Gregor Gillespie train. A little late, but better late than never. I think he runs all over Jason Gonzalez. Gonzalez isn't very good. He's coming off a submission win, so that's promising. Again, I mean, Gillespie is a great wrestler, and clearly he can bang on the feet as well and has some power. So I'm going to say knockout. I'm going to say knockout again, even though his roots is on the mat, is wrestling. Gonzalez has been knocked out in the UFC, doesn't have a fantastic chin, it seems, and if he gets hit, I think he's going down. So Gillespie might knock out in the first round. Next up, we got a middleweight clash between Showweather himself, or Lightning, Hector Lombard, taking on Lionheart, Anthony Smith. Would have been better if I said Anthony Lionheart Smith. That sounds 10 times better. Jed, kind of a weird fight here because I feel like people think it's closer than it really should be, but for good reason, because Lombard has fallen off so much and Smith is kind of riding high off a couple wins. What do you think about this fight, and who is your pick?
You kind of nailed it when you said that this is a weird fight. I think it's an extremely weird fight because my gut, like my initial instinct is, hey, we're all like, holy shit, Smith is are we kidding here? Like he's the favorite? Like we all know that Hector Lombard's like a way better fighter, right? Like we're all aware of this. Like he's a way better fighter and athlete. At the same time, Hector Lombard been a minute since he's looked good, you know. old guy. We're not, he probably had various points in time supplemental assistance. We'll put it like that. So maybe his body's predisposed to breaking down a little quicker. He's already an old guy, hasn't looked sensational. I think he had a credible argument that he beat Johnny Hendricks, though, who's another guy who hasn't looked all that good in general. But yeah, this fight really, to me, comes down to just that sort of question: is where is Hector Lombard in his life and his physicality? Because he's fighting a younger guy who's going to be a bigger guy. Smith is a pretty big guy for the division, and we know Hector Lombard previously has competed at 170. Honestly, 170 sort of feels like that's actually his appropriate weight in general. But Anthony Smith is, I don't know, man. I just don't think a whole hell of a lot of Anthony Smith's game. And so if he wins, to me, it really is just that it's time for Lombard to hang it up. He's a much better athlete. He's a much better fighter. Anthony Smith is not a great defensive wrestler. I think Lombard can take him down. And Smith will play off his back, even though he's not like super good at it. Despite the fact that Smith has like 40 fights, his fight IQ is not what you would expect a veteran like his to be. So I won't be surprised if Hector Lombard comes out there and the younger, bigger guy just kind of beats him because Hector's old. But I think he's still – I can't do it. I can't pick against him. He's just he's a better fighter with far more skills in MMA and more raw athleticism. I can't do it. I think he has the ability to just bolt Smith, just like land a fucking huge punch because he's Hector Lombard and can land a huge punch on anybody if it happens. To me, this fight's the Cesar Ferreira fight for Anthony Smith again. He fought a better athlete, took him down a couple times, and that was the end. I think he's fighting a better athlete, can take him down a couple times, and that'll be the end. Give me Hector Lombard on points.
Yeah, this is a fight I'm not really too sure about either. It's a very weird fight. I feel like it could go two ways. I don't know how Hector Lombard's going to do early in the fight, or especially, I take that back, later in the fight. And I'm not sure how Anthony Smith is going to do early in the fight. I feel like it's kind of a toss-up. Anthony Smith, he's been able to get back-to-back stoppages over guys that I guess a lot of people thought were going to be able to defeat him, and he was able to come back. It was Elvis Smith top kick, and he's not that great. But he also fought Andrew Sanchez, I believe is who it was, and was able to get a comeback knockout there in that fight. I think that I wonder what's going to happen because we've seen Anthony Smith stopped before, but it's been a while. Hector Lombard does have some pretty powerful hands, but I'm worried and questioning what's going to happen in the later rounds because he does slow down quite a bit with his technique as the fight extends past the first 5 minutes. And that's why I'm thinking, well, maybe Anthony Smith is going to be able to capitalize later in the fight, similar to what he did against Andrew Sanchez, after Hector Lombard has gassed out because I don't know. USADA's been around a little bit. I think that I think Anthony Smith is going to be able to pull off something similar to what he did in that fight. I think that we'll see Hector Lombard take the first round, probably get a takedown in there. And then I think Anthony Smith will be able to have the better conditioning. He does have some pretty decent conditioning to be able to stick in there and hang through until the end of the fight. So I'm going to take Anthony Smith by a third-round knockout. I think that he's going to be able to stop Hector Lombard if Lombard gets tired. But then again, I think if Smith does take over in that third round and he doesn't get a finish, it's going to go to a decision for Hector Lombard. Or I think that Hector Lombard could get an early stoppage. But I'm going to go out on the limb. This is definitely my least confident pick of the card. But I'm going to take Anthony Smith by a third-round knockout over Hector Lombard.
Jed, just remind me who you picked. Did you go Lombard?
Yeah, I went Lombard.
Okay. So Jed, our last 5 months have been a lie. Wes did pick Greg Gillespie to defeat Andrew Holbrook. I just went back and checked.
Way to go.
And
good call, Wes.
He called it by
I told
TKO.
you.
He got the TKO too.
I told you. Word for word. I've told you. I've been so high on this guy, and I'm so stoked to watch him win again.
Well, don't worry, because in the very next fight, we'll talk about a guy who you guys both picked Jake fucking Ellenberger to beat, and I told you were dumbasses, and you still did anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we knew we've been there before.
All right, continue. Nicholas,
All right.
continue. It's you're the call on the Smith. But do propers to Wesley Riddle for not being nearly as incorrect about Greg Gillespie as you are, Nicholas.
Yes. Hector Lombard will defeat Anthony Smith. That is my pick. I'm not super confident because how the hell can you be confident in Hector Lombard winning a fight and not coming up
When
short?
was the last time he won a fight? Anyone know? It's got to be a minute, right? Off the top of your head.
It wasn't Josh Berkman, was it? Oh my God, it was.
But he got overturned.
No, it wasn't.
And then
it got overturned. So it's Jake Shields.
Wow.
He hasn't won a fight in over 3 years.
I mean, to be fair, Neil Magny, Dan Henderson, and Johnny Hendricks aren't the easiest competition, but Hendricks and
Dan Henderson's 50 years old.
I know. That definitely doesn't help. And
Hendricks
in 2017 is also a Hendricks who got knocked out by Bosch and still beat Hector Lombard. This is not where Hector Lombard wanted to be 3 or 4 years into his UFC career. That's fair to say. But I still do think he gets past Anthony Smith here. I mean, Smith is good. He, come from behind victory. You got the storyline and it's cool, but I just don't think he's actually that good. He has heart. He has a chin. He's super gritty and tough, and he's all around an okay fighter. He's had some submissions. He's, a good knockout artist. Nice kicks. He uses his reach pretty well. He has a 6-inch reach advantage and a 7-inch height advantage. That is insane. And he's a vet, but so is Lombard. Lombard's 34-7-1 with 2 no contests, and Smith is 27-12. I like Lombard, though. I think his fundamentals are just so much better. I think he's, in general, the better striker. He's not reliable, so I'm not confident, but I think he should be able to outpoint Smith. He needs to get him inside, and if he doesn't, Smith is going to tear him apart. Not stylistically, but just in general, Lombard is so much better. But sometimes that just doesn't matter when you're so done, and when you're so much smaller than one guy, and when you just seem to always fall apart. Sometimes skill doesn't matter, and that could easily be the case here. But in this fight, I do think it'll matter. I think Hector Lombard gets inside. I think he's able to outpoint Smith on the feet. I think this will mostly play out on the feet. Takedowns for Lombard, considering he's strong, wouldn't be a bad option. Considering Smith is so much bigger and he could do some work ground and pound from top. But I do think he gets the job done. I'm not confident, and I think this will be relatively close. But Lombard by unanimous decision is my pick. Next up, we got the co-main event of the evening. It is not the best fight on the card like we expected. Thiago Alves versus Mike Perry. Thiago Alves, unfortunately, lives in hurricane territory down in Florida. Mike Perry is now fighting Alex Reyes. Alex Reyes is from Team Oyama down in Irvine, California. He is American. He's 13-2 professionally. He has 69% of his wins by knockout TKO, 31 by sub. If UFC page is right, he's never won by decision. Mike Perry or newcomer Alex Reyes, who's stepping up on less than a week's notice. Jed, is this a fight where we just don't need to say a whole lot about?
Pretty much. Here, the things I'll say about this are you should watch it. Mike Perry is an interesting figure in a lot of ways, but if you're just talking about in-cage performance, I think this guy is one of the better prospects for welterweight. I don't think he's going to hold the title, but I think he has the raw athleticism and skill and talent to be a top 10 guy. Think like a not as good Cody Garbrandt. This dude can box a little bit. He doesn't have a depth of skill, but he knows what he doesn't know. He doesn't try and do things that don't fit what he does well or what he is capable of doing. And he sort of has an inherent understanding of how to do violence onto other human beings. He's a big power guy. So I would expect him to show out here. I know dick all about Gonzalez. The only things I do know is that he has competed at lightweight a bunch. He's coming in on short notice. He seems like a big guy, and he has a couple catch weights on his fight, which makes me think maybe he's blown weight trying to make lightweight a couple times. And so because of that, maybe 170 suits him a little better, and he'll come in okay. But I was looking forward to Alves Perry. I had not decided who I was going to pick there because Perry's the younger guy and Alves is faded, but Alves is such a veteran and has so much skill. Just skill wise, he would beat the hell out of Perry, but it only takes one, and Perry's got that one in the chamber. I don't know. I just don't know dick about Gonzalez, and I don't know what type of game he would have. He would have to be. It would be a really strange occurrence for a guy that I don't know anything about to have a good enough skill set to come up a weight division and beat Mike Perry. He would have to be a really good wrestler or a really good striker, and those guys I feel like I would know about them existing. So, yeah, give me Mike Perry by KO early in the fight.
Don't really have too much more to add. I looked at some film on Alex Reyes. He's not that bad of a fighter, but the only thing that's really concerning is that he's coming off a fight that he just fought last month. So he just fought a month ago, and before that, he hadn't fought, I think, since 2015. So that right there kind of says, well, I mean, I wonder what that break was for. Don't know too much about it. But then again, having just fought a month ago, I know he was probably able to get a fast knockout, but I guess not really having a whole lot of time to prepare. Probably having a good break in between then, just trying to relax a little bit, and then coming in on short notice now.
He was scheduled for a fight in like a week, I'm pretty sure.
Wow, so he was going to fight twice in pretty much 2 months, which is pretty impressive. I think I have nothing really bad against his game. I like it. He's got some pretty impressive skills. Not really the quickest fighter in the world, but overall, I do think that Mike Perry's going to be able to get the job done. He does have a pretty impressive game, really impressive striking abilities. Don't really know how his wrestling is. That's something I don't know if we're ever going to have to see, just because he likes to keep the fight on the feet, and that's where he excels at. But I do think that he'll be able to come in and get the victory. Don't know if he can get the knockout, just because it seems like Alex Reyes is pretty durable, but I did pick it by knockout, just seeing that Mike Perry does have quite a bit on his resume, but also the fact that Alex Reyes is coming off a fight from 1 month ago and also has not had a whole lot of time to prepare for this. And also the fact that he was knocked out in his first professional loss. I think that Mike Perry's going to, of course, have the striking advantage and possibly get a stoppage here. So I've got Perry picked by a second-round knockout over newcomer Alex Reyes.
The only thing I know about Alex Reyes is that he's coming from Team Oyama, who seems to have been doing really, really well lately. They've produced a lot of new UFC talent, fairly unknown fighters like Humberto Bandone, but they're pulling off a lot of upsets, again, like Humberto Bandone. And there's others that I'm forgetting. I know Chito Vera, of course, has been doing really, really well, and among others. So that's good. He's training out a good camp, of course, with good coaches, Colin Oyama, of course. But Mike Perry is a bad man. Maybe in both ways, in two ways. I think Mike Perry in the cage is, I'm just stating the obvious. The guy is really, really good on the feet. He's incredibly powerful. He is very, very vicious. He doesn't give a shit. He'll go after it. And he's willing to brawl if need be. I just think, again, not knowing much about Reyes and what he brings to the table, I don't know what he can bring to the table as a newcomer who mostly is a striker, just going by how many wins he's had on the feet by TKO. It seems like that may be where he excels, and he's been knocked out before, as Wes mentioned, and Perry is a better striker than the majority of the UFC welterweight roster. So got to go Mike Perry here, and Reyes on short notice, hard to prepare. For such a dangerous fighter as Perry is, on 3 or 4 days notice, just not a good fight. This is sort of, a shake hand with the UFC. This won't matter. It won't affect my standing. It's on short notice and all that. Mike Perry, knockout first round, book it, pretty easy. All right, let's do this real quick because we have about 13 minutes. Jed was able to extend by 10 minutes. So we have 13 minutes before we're saying goodbye, and we still have DraftKings and bonuses and all of this. And, of course, the main event of the evening, number 3 middleweight in the world, Luke Rockhold, taking on former 2-division WSOF champion and current number 9 middleweight UFC contender, David Branch. The former champ, Rockhold, is coming off his title loss to Michael Bisping, has been on the sidelines for just under a year and a half. Branch made his re-debut in the UFC against Krzysztof Jotko at UFC 211 this past May and won by a fairly lackluster decision. Jed, the former champion, Luke Rockhold, or David Branch, who walks away the victor in the UFC Fight Night 116 Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, main event this Saturday, tonight.
Give me Luke Rockhold. I still think he's my pick for best middleweight alive. It's close. A fight between him and Bobby Knuckles would be interesting. I think he beats the ever-living shit out of Bisping in a trilogy fight that will never happen. And I think he probably beats all the other middleweights too. But Dave Branch surprised me by beating Krzysztof Jotko, and I don't think that type of game plan would work here, i.e. takedowns and keeping it close. Dave Branch is just not – he's not a huge offensive threat. He can grapple, but there's nobody in the world that can grapple – that wants to grapple with Luke Rockhold. Like, just straight up, Luke Rockhold is probably the top 3 grapplers in MMA, not in grappling, but in MMA grappling, absolutely. Like, Chris Weidman is a really good grappler, and Luke Rockhold made him look like a fucking child. Like, it was embarrassing how badly Luke Rockhold beat the shit out of Chris Weidman the second they got into a grappling exchange. And Chris Weidman is a really talented grappler. Like, if Dave Branch shoots in on Luke Rockhold, he is going to get beat in a savage fashion. Either snap down series and Rockhold takes top position and beats the hell out of him, or just hits a counter wrestling sub. Like, Rockhold's game to me is completely a development of the fact that he works with such really great wrestlers in the gym every day, and he's a great athlete, but is not the same body type as DC and Cain Velasquez and Habib. Like, he's not a stocky wrestler. He's a much longer, a lankier guy, and he has developed a style around surviving those guys in the training room. And it's like, he's an incredible counter wrestler. He's one of my favorite guys to watch fight in the cage from a grappling standpoint. And striking, his weaknesses are getting punched in the face. We're not entirely sure that he has a great chin, honestly. It's certainly not a bad one, but just might be average. But boxing is a weakness. That is what that's how Michael Bisping took advantage of him. He's good at kicking, and he's competent on the feet, but he leaves his chin out, doesn't move his head a lot. But Dave Branch isn't really bringing the heat to take advantage of that. Like, he's not going to walk forward and punch Luke Rockhold in the face. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how Dave Branch wins this fight. I think the odds should make it closer than it is. But on the feet, Rockhold's going to kick him a bunch at range, and Dave Branch is just going to lose at range. Eventually, Dave Branch is going to try and effectuate a grappling game against him, and that's fucking curtains, because there might not be a human being on the planet you want to try and shoot and take down more so than Luke Rockhold. I have Luke Rockhold probably second or third round. I'll lean third round, but I think he puts up a bunch of points. Dave Branch eventually gets forced into trying to wrestle, and Rockhold makes it look like the Weidman fight. Counter wrestles, hits a switch of some kind, or peeks out on the back, and that's the game. Beats the hell out of Dave Branch and gets a TKO stoppage. So give me Luke Rockhold, round 3, TKO, sure.
I think David Branch has some good skills. One of the things that he's always utilized really well is his footwork. Does fight kind of on the outside sometimes and not a whole lot on the inside or looking for a lot of pressure, but his footwork is always there and a lot of upper body movement. Another area that he excels at is when he gets top pressure or top control and throws a lot of ground and pound when he is able to get fighters down and pops off some pretty quick jabs and utilizes a pretty effective clinch game too, where that's one thing he likes to do, push up fighters like we saw in the Jotko fight, but also a lot of his World Series of Fighting fights or Pro Fighter League fights. He'll push you up against the cage and just mix in a variety of shots. But David Branch, once it gets on top, that's an area that a lot of people struggle with, and that's how David Branch has picked up so many victories. But the one thing that you talked about was Rockhold's defensive game, and especially in regards to wrestling. I don't think David Branch is going to be able to get Luke Rockhold down in this fight. If he does, I do think that David Branch has a good chance to land some pretty decent shots because he is really good when he's able to get that top positioning. But then it goes the same for Luke Rockhold too. I think that stylistically, these two match up really well with each other. I feel like they're very similar in their games and their styles. Both like to look for submissions, both like to try to grind you out on the ground, and are very physically enduring, especially once they get on top of you. But I think when it comes to in regards to this fight, I don't think that Branch can get Luke Rockhold down, and I think that Luke Rockhold can get David Branch down. And I think when it comes to on the feet, Rockhold's technique, especially with those kicks, is just a little bit more sound than David Branch, who just doesn't, besides the jab, really have a whole lot that he throws behind his punches. And we haven't really seen him stop anybody with strikes significantly since he did with Yushin Okami, which was a knockdown and then a later finish by strikes due to ground and pound. I think that Rockhold is going to be able to be the more effective fighter on the feet. I think Branch has a shot if he can get Rockhold down, but I don't see it happening. I think it's going to be the other way around, Rockhold getting David Branch down. Rockhold could get a TKO here, but Branch is very, very durable. I'm going to go with Luke Rockhold by decision. Definitely a little risky because we haven't seen Rockhold go to a decision in quite some time, but I don't know if he's going to be able to finish David Branch, seeing how durable David Branch has been, especially recently, and knowing the win streak that he's been on. He hasn't really been faced with a lot of adversity, and I feel like he's tough enough to be able to last a while. But just to wrap it up again, Luke Rockhold is my pick. I'm going to take him by unanimous decision. I'll give David Branch 1 round, so a 49-46 for Luke Rockhold.
Yeah, I like Luke Rockhold here as well. So a little boring that we're all going the same guy, but the guy's a big favorite for good reason. But making it a little interesting, we all have Rockhold winning in different ways. Jed has Luke Rockhold by TKO. Wes, you have Rockhold by decision, and I have Luke Rockhold by submission. Rockhold is one of the best submission artists and jiu-jitsu practitioners in the middleweight division, and the only reason I don't say the best is because Jacare is still a fighter. He is one of the best grapplers in MMA. Rockhold, the guy, when he is on, he's incredible. And people look at a Bisping rematch, and I'm sure people will, look past Rockhold now, but I hope not, because he shouldn't be looked past, because that was, not what will happen 9 out of 10 times. That was far from what will happen 9 out of 10 times. Rockhold is one of the best middleweights on the planet. Not sure he is the best, but if not, very, very close to it. David Branch is very good. He's a very good wrestler. His striking is solid. It's not very good. He has a jab. He's not too powerful, pretty inactive on the feet. And I just don't see how he wins this fight. I don't think this is that close of a fight. I think both guys are very talented, but one is just on a different level, and that's, of course, Luke Rockhold. Rockhold will use his kicks and his range. I would imagine he has a bit of a reach advantage here. No, Branch does. Wow, did not expect that. Branch has a reach advantage, and Rockhold is 2 inches taller. So Branch, 3 inches of reach on Rockhold, and Rockhold has 2 inches of height on Branch. Interesting. Well, I still think Rockhold will be able to use his kicks and land on Branch and outpoint in the striking department against David Branch. Just in general, he's a better striker. His boxing still is his weakness. He's not super crisp with his punches, but his kick should work well enough. Again, Branch isn't too big of a threat on the mat, and Branch, his bread and butter is his wrestling, but Rockhold will completely counteract that with his jiu-jitsu. There's no way Branch is able to take Rockhold down and sit on top of him and grind out a big victory. That's just not going to happen. Rockhold will win this fight. I think he's outpoints Branch for the first 1 or 2, and once Branch starts getting desperate, looks to take down, that's when that's the beginning of the end, as you guys think as well. Rockhold will reverse the script and able to just start to dominate him from there. And eventually, I think he flattens David Branch out and gets a rear naked choke victory in the 3rd round. All right, that does it for UFC Fight Night 116, going down from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania tonight, starting things off on FS1 prelims, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Should be an interesting card. Oh, Jesus Christ. GG Canelo. We won't break it down. Best boxing match in a long, long time. Jed, pick real quick.
Taking Triple G.
Wes?
I've got Canelo.
I've got Canelo as well. Canelo 2-1 here on Before the Battle. Interesting. Watch that. If you're going to watch one thing tonight, watch that. That is going to be spectacular. I really, really hope it lives up to expectations. Okay. DraftKings and bonuses. Let's do this real quick.
Bonuses and DraftKings. Let's fire up and we're okay. I'll hit my bonuses first. I'm breaking my one goddamn rule. I have one rule, I'm going to break it because I don't think the main event's going to be competitive. I think Luke Rockhold is going to beat the hell out of whoever that man that he's fighting is because I'm brain far. David Branch. I think Luke Rockhold's going to beat the hell out of David Branch. And even when he's not beating the hell out of him, I don't think it will be an interesting or entertaining fight. It'll be a lot of staring at range in the meantime. So I'm breaking my one rule. I am going with, I considered the opener, Burn Sago, but I'm going to go instead with Olivier Aubin-Mercier taking on Tony Martin. I think that fight could be a kind of fun back and forth striking exchange with fun grappling mixed in as well. So give me that for your fight of the night. My performances are going to be Luke Rockhold. Like I said, I think he's going to beat the shit out of David Branch. And Gregor Gillespie, because I think he's going to replicate his last outing and get an early KO with a big time punch. I'm going to wrap up and then I will have to leave it to y'all. But my DraftKings team, and this is subject to change because this DraftKings has a lot of play to it. I'm taking Zhu Anyanwu because I'm picking him for the upset. He's super cheap. Gilbert Burns, Anthony Hamilton, Hector Lombard, Mike Perry, and Kamaru Usman. I'll do my sign off right now and let y'all close it out, and I'll get the rest of y'all stuff later. But thank you, everybody. You can follow me on Twitter at Jed Meshew. Other than that, enjoy the fights. Love you guys.
See you later.
See you, brother.
All right, let's finish this off and let's just spend the next half hour talking about our DraftKings team because we have all the time in the world. Okay, so he had his DraftKings. I already forget what it was, and his bonuses as well. Wes, your bonuses, and I guess we'll just do it all at the same time. Your DraftKings team right after that.
Perfect. My bonuses, I've been kind of looking at it for a little bit. Since I picked Rockhold by decision, I'm not going to give him a bonus, but if he does get a finish, I think no matter how he gets a finish, it could be one of the most boring finishes possible. I feel like knowing who he is, they're going to give him a bonus just because. But I'm not going to give him a bonus. I'm going to give mine to Mike Platinum Perry. I think that he'll be able to get one over Alex Rafes if he stops him. And I've got to go Gregor Gillespie. I'm really high on this guy. I think he's going to be able to stop Jason Gonzalez in maybe the first round, hopefully like the first couple minutes. I'm really high on him, and I think he's got a big future ahead. So Gillespie is my pick in that one. So those are my two performances. My fight of the night, I'm going to give it, since I have to give one, to Hector Lombard, Anthony Smith. I feel like if maybe Lombard doesn't get takedowns, this fight on the feet could be pretty scrappy. Just seeing some big bombs thrown and a lot of combinations and trying to look for power punches and then fatigue and then trying to take over. I think it could be a pretty exciting fight. So Hector Lombard, Anthony Smith is my pick for fight of the night. My DraftKings lineup, taking a bunch of risks here, but I'm taking risks so I could throw on fighters that I'm very confident in. I'll share my two biggest risks. The first is David Branch. He was just one of the cheapest fighters on there. And seeing how similar he is to Luke Rockhold stylistically, I feel like, man, maybe David Branch can actually score some points, depending on where the fight goes. Especially with it being 5 rounds, if Rockhold doesn't get a finish, there's 25 minutes for Branch to score points. And since Rockhold's pretty expensive, and he may not get a fast, like, first-round stoppage, I don't think that having him on the team would be well, I mean, it would definitely be helpful, but not when there are other fighters at the top that are definitely picks for finishes. So David Branch, I threw on there. My other risk is Anthony Smith. It was either him or picking Hector Lombard, but I do think that Smith has a better chance in the fight to get a later stoppage with a fight going 3 rounds. Maybe he can get one off in there. My other 4, somewhat confident in Jason Sago. I've got Jason Sago on my team, but then my 3 that are definite picks and definite fighters that I feel like are going to get the job done and get some decent points. Kamaru Usman, I've got Mike Platinum Perry, and my homie Gregor Gillespie. I think all 3 of them are going to pull off some impressive finishes. Fools. You're already back. What happened?
I cleared the next 2 minutes off, so I thought I'd come back so I could get your stuff and not have to get it off the air.
Perfect. Well, I'm going through my DraftKings now. I was just saying I have. Yeah, my performances, my fight of the night, I've got it to Hector Lombard, Anthony Smith.
Okay.
My 2 performances, I'm giving one to Mike Platinum Perry and Gregor Gillespie.
I like those picks. Those are all very, very solid picks.
Give me
Draft.
1 second because I'm trying to rework my team, but I don't think I will.
You do that, Wesley. Finish your DraftKings team. Tell them,
I
tell the
was
world, tell me, if not the world.
I was explaining I have David Branch on my team, and it's not because I am confident in him. I think he can get some points in this fight, but I picked him more for the reason that there were fighters at the top more expensive that I'm more confident in getting an early finish or a definite finish than I am in Luke Rockhold. So I didn't put Luke Rockhold on my team for that reason. I thought it would be helpful to have a cheaper guy. So I did have David Branch on there. My other risky pick, Anthony Smith. I chose him over Hector Lombard, so I'm just going to stick with it. But I think one of those two don't have a chance to get a finish in that one. I've got Jason Sago in a fight where I think if he can get on top, I think he'll be able to control Gilbert Burns. And then my 3 definite picks that I'm very confident in, I've got Kamaru Usman, I've got Mike Platinum Perry, and Gregor Gillespie. I think all 3 of them are going to pull off some impressive victories and get up and rack up some pretty good points.
All right. Well, Jed, remind me what your team is.
My team, which is probably going to get changed because I think there's a lot of play on this week in DraftKings, a lot of big favorites, but I think there's just like if you could just make a team of like Gillespie, Usman, Rockhold, like that'd be awesome. But so I think there's a lot of play, and I'm going to try and work around and maybe get something different. But at the moment, Onyanwu is going to make my team 100% of any of my lists because he's so cheap, and I'm picking him to get the win on the upset. I've also got Burns, Lombard, Perry, Hamilton, and Usman. Hamilton, I think he's going to get a knockout, but he might get cut. But that team might change a lot. But Onyanwu will be on it 100%.
Well, it shouldn't change because we have 5 fighters the same.
Oh, well, I mean, that's the thing. I can see changing. Like, I could just swap out Usman for Gillespie or some shit like that. Like, any of these things, there's a lot of play there. So, what's your team?
Well, right now, kicking things off is Tony Martin. So we go Tony Martin, then Mike Perry, then Kamaru Usman. Then the cheap guy that I don't think will win but has a chance is Zhu Onyanwu and Anthony Hamilton and Gilbert Burns.
Yeah, I mean, I almost put Martin on my team as well. Like, there's just because I think he has a chance to win that fight. I'm not picking him to beat Abu Mercier, but I think it's very possible he does. So I think there's a lot of play this week. I'm gonna fiddle around and see if I can come up with a more optimal team, so to speak. But Nicholas, what are your performances so I can leave?
Performances. Am I allowed to say 4 performance nights and no fight? Because that's truly what I think will happen.
You are, I guess. Sure. Fuck it. Why not?
All right.
Wes
I started it. Yeah, I started it, so you can do it too.
We all get one go
You
at that.
should do two definites and then the other 2. So if it does end up, and they're just
pick your primary 2 performances, I guess.
Okay, that's fair. Primary performances will go to Mike Perry and Gregor Gillespie.
Copycat.
Honestly, I
agree.
I actually sort of like your idea of 4 performance bonuses as I think about it, but continue and fill it out for me.
My one option for a fight night would honestly be Lombard Smith, but there's no way
I fucking picked over Mercier Martin. I feel you. Fight of the night's not looking strong. I'm with you. What are your last 2 then, sir?
My last 2 are kind of boring because they're all main cards. Rockhold and Usman. I think all 4 look really, really impressive. The only other option would be Anthony Hamilton. Those are the 5 finishes I think we see on this card, but yeah, they like giving the bonuses to main carders, so that's what it's gonna be.
All right, well, with that, gentlemen, I actually am out. I know you're about to do your send off, so again, thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Twitter at Jed Meshew. Check my writing at MMAfighting.com. Love you guys.
Love you guys twice in a row, or twice in one show. That's fantastic. All right. You guys can find me on the Twitter at Nick Baldwin MMA. You can find my writing over at bloodyelbow.com. And I've been doing a little bit of regional MMA work for MMA Saka. Back on board with the original team. I covered Mercenary Combat League 1, the first pro MMA event here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, last night at the RBC Convention Center. It was a great night of fights. I only did 2 post-fight interviews. not as I was hoping for more, but after I'm done here and after I do a couple of things, I'm going to possibly meet up with some fighters from the card and do a quick interview with them. So we'll see. But check out youtube.com/MMA Sucker for that. My other podcast I hosted with Andrew the Clown Kid Lawrence. It's called The MMA Circus. This past week on episode 128, we had Raging Cajun Johnson, who was victorious at UFC 215, picked up the win over Adriano Martins, big upset. We also had undefeated featherweight prospect and former WSOF vet, Hakeem Dawado. He was on the program as well. Great stuff from him. Wes, let everybody know where they can find you on social media, your writing, and anything else you got to plug. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Pretty much you can follow me on Twitter at AllThatMMA, where I do all my social media communication. Haven't been over here in a while, but I do write for MMA Sucker. I've had a lot of stuff going on in my life, but whenever I do have time, I'm going to be back writing over there. MMA Sucker, of course, Nick and I both over there with a good group of guys. But besides that, that's pretty much it for me. I'm also going to UFC Norfolk, which is a couple months away. But if you're going to UFC Norfolk, on Twitter, send me a message and we'll meet up. I like to meet some people when I go down, or know a few people that already want to try to meet up. So if you happen to be somebody watching, feel free to shoot me a message. And that's all the MMA on Twitter. Besides that, that's pretty much it.
One last note. I just was looking back at my DraftKings, and I think I'm going to switch Gillespie or Usman out for Gillespie. I had 300 remaining, so I was able to make that change. Ultimately, I think I'm a bit more confident in Gillespie by finish than Usman by finish, so that is my reasoning there. Well, that is it. Episode 82 of Before the Battle in the books. The UFC Pittsburgh edition. Thank you guys for watching. We really do appreciate it. Best of luck tonight with picks, and if you bet, then that as well. And enjoy the fights. Talk to you guys later. Peace out.